The Blast from Our Past Network.
Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura, a deep dive into underrated and unknown television shows from our youth. Cartoons, sitcoms, cop shows, and much more. Sit back and enjoy some nostalgic fun with TV Obscura.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Podcasting After Dark presents TV Obscura. I am 1/3 of the TV Obscura team, Corey, aka Sleazy C. Joined with me, as always, are my two brothers from other mothers. Try saying that 5 times fast. Zak, the Total Snackage Schaefer, and Diallo, the Armageddon Jackson. Boys, this is an episode that I couldn't be any more excited to discuss with you guys. This one is pretty much been since the beginning of TV Obscura, these 3 shows we've talked about. But before we get into all of that craziness, Diallo, what's going on, buddy? How's it going these days?
I'm doing good. What's up with you guys?
Hanging in there, enjoying some 80s nostalgia.
Oh yeah, I've been going through it this week, watching some of these. It's been great, really great.
God, buddy. Oh, God, you have no idea how much I love this episode already. But Zak, my man, we just talked a few days ago with Sorority Babes. Well, actually, it was about a week ago, but I edited it a few days ago. But how's it going, my man? How was your weekend?
Oh, it was great, and I'm ready to dive into some childhood trauma cartoons. We should title this episode 3 of the most traumatic children's cartoons of all time from the 80s. I think it's safe to say, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, buddy. I do agree with that. Before we start chipping away at these, let's just announce what we're doing here. You, Zak, are handling Inhumanoids, 1986. Then Diallo's going to be talking about Centurions, also from 1986. And I'll be bringing us home with Spiral Zone from 1987. And yes, Zak, I would say that all 3 of these shows probably traumatized me in some way, shape, or form, including Centurions, because I thought the 2 villains were absolutely grotesque when I was a kid, and I did not want to ever end up like them and everything. So I was like, this is horrible. So yeah, I think that statement stands, my friend.
Yeah, I think these are pretty good ones to choose to do right now because the world is, if you look at it half empty, the world is falling apart. If you look at it half full, the world is falling apart. So I think it's safe to assume that, in some way, shape, or form, we are going to see the reality of one of these shows in the future.
Yeah, I hope it's Inhumanoids.
I hope so too.
So, as I have alluded to multiple times, this show's big for us because all 3 of these cartoons have been on the to-do list for TV Obscura since the very beginning. We knew we were going to cover every single one of these. I don't know if we thought we were going to group them together or whatnot, but I know I have been chomping at the bit to discuss each and every one of the titles that we're going to do tonight. So before we jump in, I just want to ask Zak, did Bodie watch all 3 of them?
He did, and
Okay.
so I'll give a Bodie scale. I'm going to do 2 scales, and I hope you guys join me in the second one. I'm going to do 2 scales. One will be the Bodie scale, whether he liked it or not on a scale of 1 to 5, and also traumatized. And then the second one being I'm gonna rank all 3 of these in order of best or worst to best toy line.
Oh, okay. All right.
So which one had the best toy line? Which one? First, second, and third.
Perfect, dude. That's perfect. We'll do the toy line rating 1 to 5 as well after each episode or after each show that we discuss. Diallo, did you watch these over at Zak's place with Bodie? Did you watch Centurions at least?
No, I didn't get a chance to go over there and watch them, but I did watch them here. So we are gonna Dive in.
Dude, real quick, I was talking to Zach offline before you jumped on, Diallo. That Centurions Daily Motion link, and by
Yeah.
the way, guys and gals, I post everything, all the links on Patreon, our Patreon page for free, and that's patreon.com/podcasting after dark. So you guys can go over there and actually watch each video, each show. I make those posts completely for free, so you can go over there. But Diallo, that thing looked amazing.
Yeah.
It looked like it was just remade, like it was totally cleaned up.
Yeah, they had a ton of episodes on Daily Motion also. None on YouTube that I could find, which was kind of interesting. But Daily Motion had all the goods. So
Daily Motion seems to be our saving grace sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah, I hope it doesn't get shut down.
Yeah.
Because there used to be a website called iOffer. I don't know if it's still around anymore, but they used to sell bootlegs of all these cartoons that you couldn't find anywhere else, like high quality too, with menus and all that stuff. And that's where I got Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and Kid Video and Recess, the animated series. So yeah, unfortunately, 2 out of these 3 are not available on DVD. Centurions is, but it's pricey for the combined 2 sets. It's like close to $60. So is it worth it? Yes, but still, it's expensive.
And Zach and I also were talking, Diallo, before you jumped on, like why we don't see any of these cartoons anymore coming out on DVDs. Is there no market for it other than the collectors, do you think?
yeah. I think that literally they are obscure, which. But I mean, it seems weird, right? Because like these at the time, they seemed like they were really big phenomenons in their own way. So the fact that they just completely fell off is odd. But I was actually kind of thinking about another cartoon that just seemed like it was everything. Early '90s, it was Gargoyles, and that's another cartoon that once it was gone, it was just. I mean, it almost erased from like memory. Like, I'm just so surprised that a show like that hasn't been done as a live action movie or whatever. Just no reboots. So I guess certain things just fall away and disappear.
And just live in the time period that they existed,
Yeah.
The new toy line for Gargoyles is pretty dope, though. So hopefully,
Oh, yeah.
hopefully it's getting a new resurgence.
I think so on Disney Plus. I think I've heard
Yeah.
a lot of people have been watching it on Disney Plus, and it's
Yeah.
it's high on our to watch list. I actually think I'm going to show it to my nephew Gray Bear one of these days because I love that show and because I loved Goliath. I love Sam Keith's voice. Nope.
Yeah.
Keith David's voice.
Yeah. Which David?
Sam Keith is the artist.
Yeah, I have I got the gargoyle. What's his Goliath from Fern? Fern got it for me. It's an amazing
Nice.
it's an amazing figure, and but yeah, it's a show that is incredibly rich, and it just even though people are watching it, you don't hear like of any studios. I don't hear any rumors. And that's so odd. It's just so odd, and I feel like it's the same with some of these shows.
And to your point, if they're not going to put out Gargoyles on DVD or Blu-ray, like something that at least Disney's kind of like backing and making toys of, ain't nobody going to be putting Inhumanoids out on Blu-ray or Spiral Zone or something,
I know, it's such a shame. Such a shame.
Yeah, it really is. God damn it. But hey, I mean, this is kind of a spoiler alert, but yeah, all 3 shows are fun as hell, and I can't wait to dive into each and every one of them. Zach, you want to take us to the center of the earth with Inhumanoids?
Inhumanoids, the evil lies within. That's terrible, by the way. That was terrible.
I don't know. I was inspired, actually.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Inhumanoids was a 1986 cartoon that ran for 13 episodes. It was a part of a Sunday block with a couple other shows, those shows being Bigfoot.
And the Micro Machines. He's big, bad,
Right.
and he's mean.
Also Robotics,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
right? And then Gem. They were part of like a 4-package deal. that was made to kind of, help market each show out. Gem was the only one that really took off out of those 4, and obviously ran for like 65 episodes or something like that. Metroid Robotics never made it past the kind of pilot episode that they released as a movie.
By the way, I love the robotics toys, and I absolutely hate the redesigned robotics toys that are like coming out this year.
Oh, you're thinking of like RoboForce.
Oh, yep, there you go. My bad, RoboForce. Robotics, was that like almost like a Constructs type of set? And there was like a T-Rex type of creature or dragon that you could build or something?
Yeah, so the robotics were like set in space. I always used the space figures when I recreated Aliens.
Okay.
Because they look like as close as you were going to get to the LV-426, like, space people or whatever. Yeah, they were like a cross between Legos and not Tinker Toys, but
Erector sets.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
you know
they
what?
were
I had the comic book for this, or one of the issues.
I think there was a Marvel comic,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were battery powered, and you put them together, and like the head would move or the body would turn or some shit like that. They were cool. They were really cool, and they were fairly inexpensive in comparison to other things that came out at that time. But so Bigfoot and robotics didn't last very long. Gem obviously took off and became a sensation, but Inhumanoids lasted for 13 episodes, and Inhumanoids was the basic premise of Inhumanoids was these creatures from the Earth were rising up to take over the planet, essentially. The leader was Metlar, who was like a lava creature. He later got kind of replaced by apparently in like another character. I didn't see this episode, but like a snake type creature that's even more terrifying than Metlar, if you can imagine that. His cohorts were Tendril, who was like a plant-based monster. He looked very kaiju looking, and with these long tentacles. And then, of course,
hold on, and of course, Decompose.
Decompose, who was like this rotting corpse of a creature who would take his victims, put them inside his chest, and turn them into zombies, basically. When he's first introduced, when he's still encased in amber, he's found underground by archaeologists, and he's brought to a museum. I dare anyone to disagree with me. The shadow form of him, like the reflection of him in the amber, looks like the Thing, the final creature from The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. It looks exactly like that. So I'm sure that was influenced by it. These creatures are trying to take over the Earth, and they're battling the Earth Core, which are a group of scientists with these like over-the-top mech suits that all have their different attributes. The characters' names are Augur, Liquidator, and Inseminator. No, I'm kidding.
Good one, buddy.
Copulator.
Copulator. Now, Herc Armstrong, who has like a green suit, and then Dr. Derek Bright, who has like a blue suit. They're very colorful. They each kind of had the elements of the Earth, basically. They're aided by these Magna Core rock creatures and the Redland tree people. And the tree people, obviously live above ground. The Magna Rock people, or the Magna Core people, kind of guard Metlar until he gets broken out of his... he's like the last one out of the 3 that gets basically brought back to life. Brought back to life with the help of a human as well. Blackthorn, who is... he's like the Donald Trump type character, where he's like this millionaire megalomaniac. And his sister, Sandra Shore, she kind of turns on him and becomes a good guy and aids the Inhumanoids. I'll get to her in a second. But before I get into any more details about the show, I really quickly want to run through this cast. So I mentioned all the characters' names, but here's some of the actors who play some of these characters. Michael Bell, you might recognize, well, Diallo will recognize from Three's Company, as he always does.
As I always do.
But, of course, and Diallo won't disagree with me on this, he is Duke from G.I. Joe.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. William Calloway was Beachhead on G.I. Joe. Great character on that. Dick Gautier played Serpentor on G.I. Joe. Ed Gilbert played Thrust and Blitzwing in Transformers. Christopher Collins, another actor on the show, he was Starscream and Cobra Commander from G.I. Joe and Transformers.
And you can totally tell it. You can totally tell it's him doing Decompose's voice.
Oh yeah, I love it. Shipwreck, the voice of Shipwreck, Neil Ross is on this show, and of course Richard Sanders. There's many others, but I'll point out Richard Sanders, who plays Dr. Bright. He was Les Nessman on WKRP in Cincinnati.
That's awesome.
So this show features a lot of actors from Transformers and G.I. Joe. Obviously, it is a part of the Sunbow universe, Marvel and Sunbow. In the connection it has on the show, there was a reoccurring character on G.I. Joe, Gem, and Transformers, Hector Ramirez, who was like the Geraldo Rivera reporter.
Yeah.
He's on an episode of Inhumanoids.
Yeah.
And then another character, and I haven't seen this episode yet, but there's another Earth Corps hero that joins the team named Brad Armbruster, and Brad Armbruster is the name of Ace from G.I. Joe.
What to say? Yeah, that was I recognize that name. That's cool. That was one of my favorite Joes.
So this isn't the only cartoon to share a universe with G.I. Joe. Cops and Robbers.
Yeah.
We'll get to that down the road as well. That has a connection too, but I think it's pretty badass that they share the same universe.
And I'm kind of just learning this as an adult. I didn't know that they shared, had a shared universe or anything back then.
Yeah,
but now that I hear that, I think that's so cool, and that makes sense that like Jim would be a part of it and everything. Like it all kind of fits together when you think about it.
It totally does. And this show had like very similar music to G.I. Joe as well in Transformers. But the original like first five episodes was the miniseries, the pilot miniseries that was later kind of turned into a movie, a VHS movie. So I think you can find that as well, like the uncut version. But man, it is dark. Yeah. It is a dark cartoon, and it's very scary. Bodie and I watched this together. We made it through the first 4 episodes, and then by the 5th one, when Sandra Shore gets turned into a mutated zombie by Decompose, he's like, I think we should turn this off now. And spoiler alert, she never gets turned back in the 13 episodes. So she is, for the most part, just dead, which is a real bummer. But the show has like the similar tropes that G.I. Joe would have with the characters, like they kind of give each other shit and joke around a lot in between the action. But man, it is fast-paced, fun, totally terrifying, and out of this world, in my opinion.
Yeah, nothing else like it. Diallo, what were your thoughts, buddy?
All of these shows actually were in that spot where I think I was in high school when most of these came out. I was like maybe like a sophomore, junior. So it was like a little bit too old to get into the toy aspect of it. But and also it came on Sundays, which we always had to go to church. So I missed, I always remember like kind of, I was like, I had to get Jim in, and then the other shows, like we would leave. And so I didn't get to watch them. So Inhumanoids was one of those shows that kind of slipped through, but I distinctly remember the commercials for the toys, and the theme song. But I never really got into it. I didn't know much about it. They sort of like existed as a group of figures visually that I would watch. So this was actually the first time that I can recall actually sitting down and watching Inhumanoids, and
cool.
yeah. I mean, I know I'd watched it, but I just couldn't remember, anything. But anyways, I actually really dug it. I thought it was really cool. My brain it always kind of goes to like, oh, could you do this today? What elements of other things that have been done in time since that this did first? The whole kaiju thing. I was thinking of Pacific Rim,
Totally.
Episodes like that. And I actually like the aspect of not having giant robots fighting the giant monsters, but like, man-sized or human-sized armored folks fighting the giant monsters. So that was cool too. Oh, and I like the shout out to San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, they use real locations, which was really badass. Yeah. And Tendril is apparently based on Cthulhu.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
that's cool.
It definitely got that when I was watching. I said to myself, Cthulhu, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. I can see it now. Oh, cool. Yeah, Diallo, I kind of fell in the same category as you with Sunday shows. We'd always either be doing something or obviously have to go to church and whatnot. So Sunday shows were always hard for me to catch. But I did catch a couple episodes of this, when I was a kid. The intro scared the crap out of me, especially at the last shot of them falling into the towards the molten lava with no clear way to escape. I was like, what the fuck, and it looked scary as hell. And then just the fact that it's this whole Hollow Earth thing, which now is kind of played and we all get it, but back then that's some interesting shit right there, and it all takes place in Earth and everything. And then couple it with the fact that, like you said, Diallo, you got these giant monsters, but I'm with you. I like the fact that it's like dudes and normal sized dudes in armor trying to fight these things. It kind of adds this extra layer of danger to it, because you can't fight them one-on-one. You have to kind of figure out a way to do it and everything. I had the decomposed toy. And he was fucking huge. I remember he was a big, beefy toy.
Yeah, they're over a foot tall.
Yeah, it was awesome. Oh. And then Luke had Moltar, or whatever his name was.
Metlar,
there you go. I don't remember. Neither of us had, the green guy, Cthulhu. Tendril. But I only had the green guy, whichever one he was. I forgot his name, because honestly, I fucking hated the armor design in this show. I thought they were so dumb looking, and I watch it. Huh?
That was Herc.
Herc. Okay, I had Herc. Even now, I'm not a huge fan of the armor. I do like how colorful they are, and I do like that it's kind of different looking. But when I was a kid, I hated when you took off the helmets. Their heads were so tiny inside of there, and their arms and their legs looked like they were probably too long or whatever. But watching the show now doesn't change my mind about the armor. I still don't love it, but it doesn't take me out of it, because I think the concept is fantastic, and I think the art style of it, the design of it, is real strong with all these deep blacks and everything. It really gives it this dark and brooding atmosphere and everything, and it's truly terrifying, I think, to a kid or an adult. It's a pretty scary show, but that's awesome to have that as a kid's show. When the hell the last time you've seen a kid's show that is legitimately scary? It's pretty amazing. And yeah, I think it holds up well. I think what they're trying to what they're saying, it's all very eco-friendly and everything, or it's, talking about what they're doing to the earth and everything. But it also gets into this whole ancient history stuff. It's just, man, it's Ancient Aliens. This is guarantee you, people who watch Ancient Aliens nowadays probably watched this back in the day. It's a lot of crossover, and yeah, I think it's a lot of fun, and definitely worth tracking down and watching the movie. It's super cool.
Yeah. There's they also had elements of multiple frames in the picture.
Yeah, I noticed that. That was
really
cool.
He was just kind of different, and I agree with you. I thought their suits sucked. I thought at times they seemed the least inspired as far as the characters on the show. It was like the villains were actually more interesting than the heroes, but I think that might have hurt the brand in a way, because the big three. You're right. The big three toys were huge. The rock guys. What are they called? Well, there's the Magnacore lava rock monsters, and then there's like the Magnacore rock monsters, and then there's the Redland redwood trees, who are really cool and creepy as well.
And it's cool that they're creepy looking, but they're actually good guys, and I thought that was really neat too. Yeah,
they're good guys, and the toys were really cool. I agree with you. The figures of the heroes sucked. They sucked. They were like some of the worst.
There's no reason they should have sucked, because they were big. They were like beefy plastic, like everything you'd want to play with, but they look so fucking weird looking.
They were just not. They were not thought out very well. And Hasbro made these. It was a Hasbro toy line, and I love how people, and we've done it too. People say, this was the time when they were trying to sell toys to kids, but we still do it to this day. I just watched a documentary about Captain Power, and I know we'll get to Captain Power down the road. And
Corey's eyes.
Yeah,
I was like, I want to watch that documentary.
And one of the complaints that they showed a news clip from this parent council who was like, this show blatantly makes people have to go out and buy toys, buy the plane that interacts with the light, and it was like,
yeah.
Sorry, pardon my French, but bitch, where the fuck you been the past 30 years? Like, that's what every cartoon does, Yeah. It sells to kids, so get off your high horse. And so, of course, she probably never even watched the show, and then, like, this talked about how a couple years later, Power Rangers came out, and that, like, totally destroyed the toy scene with Power Rangers, like the tie-ins and shit like that. So, anyways, I feel like this show was a toy vehicle, like many of the other ones are, but man, it was so dark. And when you see Sandra Shore get consumed and turned, it's scary shit. It is like it's when Amy in Fright Night gets turned into an alien, or a vampire. It's that kind of moment. There's actually vampire skeleton bats that look like the one in Fright Night when Jerry turns into the vampire, like the kind of mutated vampire bat. I loved it. I mean, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Yeah. It's worth seeking out all the episodes. I want to watch the rest of them. I just didn't have time.
It's funny that you both you're talking about the armor, because literally when I was watching it, that's like one of the first things that came up for me. And the general design of the characters and stuff, I think that was what was always a little bit off-putting by it. So like I can enjoy the concept now of it, but back then it just looked kind of ugly.
Totally.
But I was watching, I had a little bit of a different take than you just gave, Zach, about the figures, because I almost feel like they were a little bit more inspired. I don't think it worked, but I was really dissecting the armor, and I was just like, you know what? In a way, it was, again, compared to the show I'm going to talk about, like it almost did it in such a way that it made it way more distinct than all the other armor on different shows were. So it had its own different kind of aesthetic, and like they were more rounded and bulky. And again, like I don't think that they look good at all. But I mean,
one guy looks like he's got testicles on his legs.
Yeah, that was the one I had.
But the other guy looks like a veiny dick. Yeah, he looks like a veiny dick, like a purple dick.
Yeah. But I almost, in a way, when I was watching it, and again, I'm only saying this because both of you guys brought it up, but I literally remember thinking, like it almost had to be this way. Like if you had to sit down and you wanted to make something that looked a little bit more distinct or different, like it's almost like a direction you might have gone in. And again, I repeat, I don't think it worked.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. And in fact, Augur, the bald guy on the show, he's got the purple veiny dick costume. It's very monstrous looking. If you look at his actual costume, he's got like horns on the sides. It looks like skin, muscle tissue. He's very interesting, monstrous looking. It's very they're very weird and inspired, and I love that. I just think the playability, if their heads were a little bit bigger, because dudes and dudettes, if you go on eBay and just take a picture or look at these things, you take their helmet off, it is the size. So the helmet,
A Q-tip, like a Q-tip.
yeah, it is like the their helmet is the size of a teaspoon, and then the head is the size of a Q-tip.
Yeah.
It's like so not proportioned properly.
And it makes it look like their bodies are microscopic inside the armor, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. And I know in the cartoon, they kind of make them look that way a little bit too. Like the mech suits are really bigger than they are.
Yeah.
But not that bad. And then they've got these goofy smiles on. I have this issue with action figures with smiles on their faces. Like
You're not
Duke,
supposed to be happy.
no, Duke had a fucking smile on his face, and like, what was he so happy about? You know, I get it, he's saving the day, but like action pose, come on. As a kid, that killed me as a kid because I'm like, they're not smiling when they're almost dying.
It's like Ford Fairlane. What's this asshole smiling about?
Tagline for every figure.
Yeah. And I think, and I just want to circle back to what Diallo was saying. I think you're right. I hate the designs of them, but they do stand out. Nothing else looks like them, these armors ever. Like, you could scan a toy aisle and immediately you'd be like, oh, those guys are the Inhumanoids. You know,
They're heavy, too.
They're impressive in how unique they look. But like you said, Diallo, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And you know what? A for effort, but it doesn't work. And I do think that probably created a disconnect between probably the fans and the show. Probably it's only why it was on for like 13 episodes. And I truly don't remember a lot of people playing with the toys. And I only had a couple. It definitely wasn't like G.I. Joe or something. You know? Yeah.
And what Diallo, what you were saying earlier about like. These are obscure shows, but Inhumanoids and Centurions like had, coloring books and like picture books for kids, and like they mass marketed the shit out of all this stuff. Toothbrush I think the Centurions had a toothbrush thing or a nightlight or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like these things went over the top. We'll get the Spiral Zone toys in a second when we get to that, but. As far as Inhumanoids goes, the marketing was all over the place for a show that only lasted 13 episodes. Well, 13 weeks, really, and then they just reran it over and over and over again. So.
Yeah, at nausea. So, Zach, what was? I know Bodie kind of got scared of it. So, what's the Bodie rating on this one?
So, Bodie rating on this one, he loved it at first. At first, he's like, "Oh, this is great," and then he's like, "Turn it off, it's scary." So. It went from a 5 down to a 3. And I was like, 3 because it's scary? He goes, yeah. So I'm going to say 4 for him.
Cut the difference, yeah.
Yeah. And then toy line wise, I don't know, should we rank them at the end or should we do it right now?
Yeah, let's do it now. 1 to 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst.
Overall, I'm going to give this one a 3.
Okay.
Because the villains are amazing, but the guys that I wanted to play with sucked.
Diallo, what is your overall thoughts, and then wrap up thoughts and your rating of the toys?
Yeah, I think as we were kind of talking just now, the thought of certain types of styles of anime popped into my head, and like you're watching whatever Cowboy Bebop or something like that. It has a certain slick look, but then there was always I think it was like Fist of the North Star, and it was always kind of like a little bit more like heavy lines, bulky, and that kind of makes me think about Inhumanoids for some reason. The
shadows.
Yeah, the dark shadows. So yeah, that just like it was just done in a different artistic style, and like I said, it just didn't work with the color palette and all that stuff. But the toys, I will probably say like a 2. It just,
Yeah.
like it just didn't. And then, again, that was in the time when like I was like kind of too old to buy toys, but I always like, and we'll talk about it with the next my show, like my brother was at that age where he was getting all those toys, and I don't think he had any Inhumanoids, so it just wasn't like a thing that like resonated with kids, so I just don't think it really popped. But I do remember just like that the media blitz of it all.
Yes.
I so distinct.
Yeah. Great. I think it's a really cool show. Like I said earlier, I think it's a cool concept. But yeah, it probably didn't resonate with a lot of people because it's this weird line between being scary and then still being for kids, but also being like a little too scary for the age group. So I don't really know what it's marketed at. And then as far as the toys go, I'm landing with Diallo. These guys are a 2. So you know what? If I didn't love my Decompose so much, I probably would have given this a 1.5. But I'll give it a 2.
Again, can I throw a little wrench in this too?
Sure.
On a diversity scale, A through F, this show gets an F.
Oh yeah.
So
no, I did notice that actually.
In San Francisco, and there's not even a fucking Asian character. Like, come on.
It's wild. Yeah, it's
There's
wild.
There's
wild.
one show in this group that gets an A for diversity, and it's
true.
not this one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I know it's mine.
Ding. Spoiler.
Spoiler.
Another
All right.
San Francisco show, actually.
Yep.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
On the winter solstice, when the lasting darkness threatens to descend upon the land of Atalan once united, Magi in training, Wilt Garen, and his shepherd, warrior in training, Bredain Adair, must find an ancient lost weapon before the ultimate ancient evil returns to the world of Eos. Hi there. I'm Diallo Jackson, writer of the First Noel's Chronicle podcast. The First Noel is an epic, family-friendly adventure told in serialized form. Think of it as Lord of the Rings meets, well, Christmas. Join us each week for the next thrilling chapter of The First Noel, now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all major podcasting apps, as well as Kindle Vella if you want to take a read. Thanks, and see you in Atalan. The Winter Tell is almost here.
And now, back to the show. All right, well, Diallo, let's jump into Centurions, 1986.
Power Extreme!
Bodhi said that today when he got his note, and he had a Ace McCloud on his note, and he goes, "Power Extreme."
I was so pumped when I saw Bodhi's note today, and it was Centurions. I was like, oh
me
yeah.
too.
That's for you guys.
Yeah. All right. So Centurions, there were 2 seasons for 65 episodes that all appeared apparently in 1986.
Jesus.
It was actually a cool thing is it was designed by Jack Kirby, who you may have heard of. He's done a few things.
Heard of him?
Yeah, and Gil Kane, who has done a few things also.
Who's that, by the way?
Artist that did some work for, like, he worked a lot for DC, did Spider-Man.
You've seen his work.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so the comic book legends. Jack Kirby, I think it was around the time Jack Kirby he had kind of left the Marvel, and he went on to help design a lot of cartoons. He did Thundar and some other stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was
him and Alex Toth.
Yeah, and Alex Toth. Yeah. It was a show. It was based in the far-flung 21st century.
Whoa.
we definitely might be headed in this direction.
I think so.
It focused on a group of at first 3 warriors, so to speak, and they were joined by 2 more in later seasons. And they all fought Doc Terror, who was always wrecking stuff up. Their most famous tagline was "Power Extreme," which they would say whenever they received these weapons that were beamed down to them from their satellite called Skyvault. So the characters were Max Ray, who was the sea-based Centurion. He was voiced by Pat Fraley, who also had gigs in Denver the Last Dinosaur. Prior to the X-Men, he did Pyro. He was Krang from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Galaxy High. So a bunch of shows we've done on this show. Jake Rockwell, who, surprise, surprise, if you look at his name, had to do with the Earth.
Of course.
Also a porn star name.
Yeah, right, yeah. Vince Edwards voiced him. He's really famous actually from the 60s. He's Ben Casey. He was it's like one of those epic medical shows long before ER hit the airwaves. He's also in an episode of Tales from the Dark Side, another show we've done. And a show that we might do at some point, The Highwayman.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, with Sam Jones.
Yeah, Sam Jones and Jacko.
Yeah.
And the other Centurion was Ace McCloud.
Ace the douchebag McCloud.
Yeah. Voiced by Neil Ross. Guess what his deal is? Ace McCloud had to do with the sky. My note was that he was a total player.
Yeah, he was. With the thumbs up.
Yeah.
I love the thumbs up.
Yeah. He definitely had all the charisma, and it's actually pretty interesting how that character even was like written in a show like for kids. But he did a bunch of stuff for he did Pirates of Darkwater. He was Norman Osborn in Spider-Man. He's done a lot of video games, a lot of Star Wars video games actually. Yeah, okay. Just one of them I would like noteworthy for me is that he was in Knights of the Old Republic. It was just one of the greatest Star Wars games made.
Who did he play in that?
It was a random character. I didn't get the name, but he also did the Codex narrator in the Mass Effect games. Mass Effect 1 through 3. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Avengers, Mightiest Heroes, and I put this note in there just for myself because I just recently spent maybe like 3 to 6 months diving deep in it. He played Mayor Domino in the Final Fantasy VII remake, which I saw that and I was like, oh, that's cool. I just fell in love with that game. Anyways, there were 2 other Centurions that came down the line. One was Rex Charger. He, if you can guess a little bit by his name,
He's a car-based guy.
Well, yeah, a Chevrolet. No, he was an energy programmer, and then the last one. His name is John Thunder, and you can't really necessarily tell what he did by his name, but because it's racist, you can tell you can tell what he did because he was Native American, and his deal was that he was like infiltration, and he was sneaky, and
At least there's some diversity on it.
I was like, oh man, this is bad.
I hate to cut you off, but I had no clue about either of these two these 2 new ones, and I'm looking at them now, and John Thunder, a bit problematic these days.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Sorry,
buddy.
the longest time, whenever a Native American character was in any cartoon media, it was they were straight off of the res, and they dressed like they were from the 1800s, even though it was like 1984.
What would you say about Spirit? Would you give him a little bit more cred?
Yeah, it's funny because Spirit was cool, like, and he had that cross between like that military look, and he wasn't so like, how to say it? He wasn't so
Offensive.
he wasn't so typical like in his representation. And one thing I actually thought was cool about Spirit was that he was the one that was always pitted against Storm Shadow. So it was almost like his it showed his like his prowess and his expertise.
Yeah.
So, but
He was also from Taos, New Mexico, by the way.
oh, was it for Spirit?
Yeah,
Okay.
Taos, New Mexico is like one of the most like sacred places in our country. So I think that's pretty badass.
Yeah, me and a friend, a friend of mine, he actually grew up on a res, and we always talk about that, like Native American characters in TV. It's always like the kid, and then there's the father, and then the grandfather, and then the grandfather always like is close to the spirits.
Yeah.
Always.
And the father's trying to be really modern, and the kid like the kid like gets guided by the grandfather to go back to the ways. It's like every single time, and he's always a tracker, and he always can.
Yeah. It's got to be a tracker.
Yeah. Anyways, we're getting way off. Sorry.
John Thunder threw us off.
Yeah, way off. Anyways, and then and obviously there was Doc Terror, who was voiced by Ron Feinberg. One really noteworthy thing for me was that he played Santa in The Tick. That we did for the Christmas episode.
Nice.
He was
Perfect.
Andre the Giant, Transformers. He played Headstrong. He was in Defenders of the Earth.
Defenders.
And
Who did he play in that?
He played. I didn't get the name of the character he played, but
Okay.
there's a tie-in there because Diane Pershing, who was Crystal Kane, who was up in the Sky Lab place.
As her bones are deteriorating.
Yeah. She was also in Defenders of the Earth. Defenders. And she played Dale Arden, and she's also in Flash Gordon cartoon, playing that voice Dale Arden. Also, she was also Poison Ivy, and she was the voice of Isis in Tarzan and the Super 7, which we've done also.
shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
It's such a like a small incestuous group of voice actors.
Yeah,
From
yeah.
the 80s,
Totally.
And
Totally.
because there's a couple more I just want to go over real quickly. Hacker, who's one of the henchmen, he was voiced by Ed Gilbert, who was the voice of General Hawk. He was the El Cid in The Tick, and he also had a stint in Inhumanoids, another show that we've talked about. And he was on he was on a show that at some point maybe we might do, at least I might do. He was on the Hardy Boys. He played the Hardy Boys' father. That was a show that I was really obsessed with as a kid.
Is that live action or cartoon?
Live action.
Okay.
Yeah. There was a cartoon called The Hardys, but it was kind of slightly different concept. It was more like Scooby-Doo-ish. And then lastly,
just set at a fast food place.
Yeah. Lastly, there was Bill Woodson, who was the narrator of the show. And he is noteworthy because he was the voice of the Super Friends after, what's his name from Too Close for Comfort, Ted McKnight was gone. He did the voice of the Super Friends. And the opening of Battle of the Planets, if you've ever seen that cartoon. Originally Gatchaman, and he also was the voice of the opening of The Odd Couple. Those are shows that I like. I used to watch The Odd as a 8-year-old. I used to watch reruns of The Odd Couple all the time, and
Nice.
and Battle of the Planets. So those were like, I heard his voice on here, and I was like, oh, I know that guy, So yeah. I think the most noteworthy thing, at least for me, about the show was the toys, obviously. So like as I said, like I was in high school when this came out, too old to get the toys, but these toys were a lot more appealing, and my brother had these, and I was so glad he had them because they were really cool, because the whole concept was that they the characters could get teleported pieces of their armor to deal with different things that they were kind of facing. So with the toys, you could get sort of like sets that you could use. And so it was really interchangeable. There was something cool about the colors. The designs were really cool. I think they were pretty proportioned.
They were big too and solid plastic.
Yeah, and they were, and actually they were, they were by Kenner, which is, you know, who you may have bought a few toys from Kenner over your time.
I have a glass case full of just a couple of them over here, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Mask. You're talking about Mask toys, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
And
Police Academy toys. Yeah.
The stories were actually kind of interesting because they actually covered a lot of like, it was a kids show, but they actually covered a lot of like higher minded sci-fi stories. And then when you look at the writers, actually, you kind of see there's a lot of writers that were actually like novelists, or they've done a lot of like different sci-fi. Steve Perry wrote Batman, Gargoyles. Ted Peterson. He wrote for Bionic Woman, which is one of my all-time favorite shows. Cool. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, which that's another cartoon that I might do at a certain point.
I was gonna say that should pop up on TV Obscura at some point, and Diallo, if you don't do that one, I'll bring it to the table. But you might have a better
you might have a better one than I do. I just remember watching a couple episodes back in the day, was obsessed, but couldn't really find it because it was almost got canceled like right away.
I think you and I have the exact same experience with it.
But I just always remembered. I actually found it again last year and watched some episodes. It was great. Larry DeTillo, Larry Huber, Michael Reeves, and then one of my favorites. I actually did a panel with him some years ago. Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi. He's written for like Star Trek and a bunch of other shows. So they had a pretty good pedigree of writers doing the show, and the episodes kind of dealt with a little bit more than just that surface level adventure. There was like a level of like existential dread or something on some level. So that's what I got for Centurions. I know I talked a lot. What did you think about it, Corey?
Of the three cartoons we were discussing, this one I probably watched the most. Maybe it was a Saturday morning thing or something, but I watched the hell out of it as a kid. Though that being said, I don't remember the two new Centurions, which is funny because as I was watching the episodes that we had for the show, for this TV Obscura, I was like, man, it would have been nice if there was a female Centurion, because, you know, the girl that was up in the Skywatch Tower thing up in space, beaming them down their weapons and stuff, I always wanted to, like, see her suit up or something. I thought that would have been, you know, cool. And, of course, per almost every, you know, cartoon from the 80s, there is two sidekicks. There is a dog who had cool armor, and I always wanted that dog toy, but I don't think they ever made one. No. And then, of course, they have an orangutan pet, so why not? I had Jake Rockwell toy. I had the Max Ray toy. I did not have McCloud, but I had both of those. I love them. I would even play with the Max one in the tub and everything when I would take a bath. And, you know, and I remember, like you said, Diallo, you could buy separate, like, packs of stuff for them and everything. And I love the way they looked. I love the way that, like, they felt like they were such solid, beefy toys. They were so well put together. They could take a punishment. They were a lot of fun. I love that you could take the helmets on and off. And I loved more than anything that everything was just in proportion and, like, looked correct. That being said, I think one of the reasons, you know, it's not a cartoon that I kind of, you know, have as much fond memories as like I do of G.I. Joe or something, is because I thought the fucking villains were so dumb looking. I had the blue guy, and that was it. I hated that toy. Like, you ever have a toy where you're like, you're looking at it and you're like, I hate this.
Why do I have this?
Why do I have this? I don't like this. I didn't even ask for this. I hated how it was. First off, I hated the blue guy that he was shirtless. Second off, I hated the fact that he was not in shape. He was kind of pudgy. Third, I was like, why are both of the villains, like, half of their body, yes, it's robotic, but it's not that it looks like the other half. It looks like two pieces kind of merged together, and there's no symmetry. And I think I love symmetry because I fucking hated them. But I played the shit out of the toys, and the thing is, I didn't have them fighting the enemies from the show. I just kind of had them doing their own thing because I thought they looked spectacular. And I can honestly tell you guys that to this day, I can remember playing with just like a handful of toys, vivid memories, you know, and everything. But one of the vivid memories I have is playing with my Centurions. I think they were cool toys, especially Max Ray. I loved his shade of green and black and everything. He looked amazing, so colorful, so much fun. And yeah, I think the cartoon, the episode that we watched, a couple episodes, I think it's great. I think it holds up well. And the Daily Motion encoding or remastering or whatever looks spectacular. It never looked this good. And I was like, wow, I would actually like to rewatch the entire series. And I would love to own the toys. And I think they should reboot them, or not reboot them, just bring them back like they do with Super 7 and everything. Just bring them back, you know? They look amazing. Don't even touch the design. Just bring them back as is. They look absolutely spectacular. And yeah, fond memories of Centurions. And yeah, I think the episodes it was dealing with like eco-terrorism, it was dealing with like big shit. Like the world was on fire and stuff. Like it was world, like epic sort of battles and adventures. And that was really cool. But I definitely do not remember those two new characters. So I guess that means I didn't watch it. I probably didn't watch it as much as I think I did. And I probably played with the toys more than I watched it. But boy, those toys were spectacular.
Well, you know, you might have. It's kind of like all those shows did it after after they've been on a while. Because like there's that pack of Thundercats towards the end, or a few
with the old man or whatever.
Yeah, Linkso or something like that, and then there's also on Silverhawks, another, you know, kind of the same show. It is the same thing. They had a couple of characters in, but like
Hot Wing and Flashback.
Yeah, and I remember but it's like, but when you talk about Silverhawks or Thundercats, it's always that prime group. So kind of, it's not that you didn't watch them a lot. It's just, that's just kind of what happens. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Zach, what were your thoughts on Centurions?
Well, first of all, I agree with you about the toys. The figures themselves of the heroes look just like they did in the cartoon. Like they were the most accurate looking. So for that, they get mad props when they made them look just like those guys. My issue with the toys was they weren't proportioned to anybody else. So you couldn't have them battle other toy lines. You know, forget whatever Toy Story talks about in those movies where they're like, oh no, all the toys get along. No kid did that. No kid played with their Kitty Carryall doll and a G.I. Joe guy battling in the backyard. Nobody did that.
No, I am and will always be a scale whore. I love things to scale. That's why I love like Warhammer 40,000 and stuff, because all the miniatures are to scale. And I think it's because when I was growing up, my grandfather had a train set in his basement. It wasn't like just a train set. It was like a city and everything and whatnot, but it was all to scale. And as a kid, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I'm with you, Zach, 110 fucking 1,000% on that.
Yeah, they just didn't match up with anybody, which was a real bummer, because I definitely love the heroes, and I'm a hero guy, so that's why the show scored for me. There was this overall sense of dread with Doc Terror. The miniseries, the 4-part miniseries, the pilot, I guess, is really good. I am definitely going to watch every episode from here on out, because it's just a fun show. It's so well done. It's beautifully animated, I think, for its time. Especially for a show that had 65 episodes, you see like the quality kind of deteriorates. It didn't seem like it did. I got lost in the fold as a kid with this show. There were just so many shows on at that time. I think it was on Monday through Friday, actually.
Okay.
And
okay.
I think the problem was you could choose one show or the other. I didn't have the VCR where you could set the timer for one show on another channel and watch it. That was too fancy for me. But the bummer about all of that was I just didn't get to see those shows in their entirety. Silverhawks, Thundercats, all those shows that lasted more than 13 episodes, I didn't see the last half. I think G.I. Joe is the one that maybe I missed like 5 or 6 episodes and that was it. But yeah, I love this show. I think it's really well done. It's definitely more of kid friendly out of the 3. Bodie loved it and he thought it was really cool and he wanted to keep watching more. He loved the accessory building. And the accessory building is really cool. It's fascinating. Their suits like transport them, allow them to move around, and it's kind of ahead of its time in some ways.
And to steal a term that I've learned from the toys that made us, the toys, they had a lot of play value to them with all the weapons and everything that they came with.
Yeah, and I think the reason, at least for myself, speaking so heavily about the toy lines of each of these shows is because each of these shows had really cool toy lines. They were just different. They were really different. So I love the accessories. And again, like the lead guy looks like Tom Selleck, and that's pretty badass. It's like you got Magnum PI as your hero. I love the show. I give it two thumbs up.
And Diallo, it's funny when you said that Kirby designed these. Dude, I can see that now with the circle peg holes, and everything, because it totally looks like, like his New God stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. And Kirby's all about those connected circles with lines connecting them and stuff. And I can totally see it now. It's like, oh, like right when you said it, it was just like flooding my brain.
Yeah, definitely. He's he's a creator that I didn't really appreciate till I was much older,
Yeah.
But now I definitely see the vision that he had and the impact that he had. So
yeah. I'll give you my final thoughts on it. I think it's, like Zach said, it's beautifully animated. I think it's a gorgeous show. I like how colorful it is. I like their colors, and as far as like the villains go, they're not as offensive on the show because you're not, like, I guess, playing with them, and you're also they're kind of fighting like the robots and stuff, the grunt robots and everything. So it's not as bad when you're not actually playing with it. So I do want to go back and rewatch this series and everything on Daily Motion because I don't have the DVD set. But as far as toys go, I gotta land on 3.5. It can't be a 4 because I hated the villain toys, but I can't give it a 3, because I really like the 3 Centurions. I think that was really cool, and I think it's a great concept. And I think like I said, the playification or whatever was just the play value was really fucking high with it. And yeah, for a show that I however many episodes I watched, I played with the toys a lot longer than I watched the show itself, I think. Diallo, wrap up thoughts on this one and your toy rating?
Yeah, I watched it pretty significantly. It's funny that you said that, Zach, about the timing. I think for me, it came on afternoons, Monday through Friday on TV 44.
TV 44.
Yeah, so I for whatever reason, I was trying to think about it. I'm like, wait a minute, yeah. So because I know G.I. Joe and Transformers was like a 1-2 punch at like 4 and 4:30, but then I guess I was watching Centurions a little bit before that. I have no idea. But anyways, it was a great cartoon. Loved the color, the artwork. It had a vision of the future that wasn't as dark as the other two, but it still had the world, like you said, the world was on fire. For the toys, I would actually give it a 4. I would give it a 5 if the villains actually looked better. There was something about the inception of the idea of the villains, I think, where they were just sort of like one note evil bad guy, which most cartoons at that time did. But I think in this case, it might have been better if he had been one of the Centurions that had like it didn't work out or something. It grafted to his body, and then it would have been also a little bit more personal, and I think it could have grown from there.
What if he was like a Gen 1 Centurion where they haven't sort of figured out, how to sort of make everything work, and it kind of got grafted to him?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like, maybe if the villains were just, their personality was more interesting, they could stay, the design could be the same.
Yeah.
But it's every time, I am Doc Terror, I am going to destroy the Earth.
Yeah.
It's like, but why? Like, give me, and even, I think even as a kid, I needed something more, because at least Cobra Commander had a personality and, had like rapport with his people and a banter stuff going on. Here, yeah, it's just, I am Doc Terror. Everything you need to know is in my name. I don't even need to talk. You know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah.
Fuck you, man.
Maybe he was just misunderstood, people being ableist against him, and he just decided to go down that path. He just wanted a hug.
Yeah. So four for the toys. That's pretty.
Yeah,
that's pretty damn good.
And I say 4 because I actually think the hero side of that equation was like that good.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna give them so on a Bodhi scale, I'm gonna give this show 4. He really liked it, solid. It checked all the boxes for him overall. But on the toy line, yeah, I'm teetering between 3.5 and 4. I'm gonna give it a 4 based on the coolness factor of the heroes. But I agree with you, Corey. The villains sucked. They're just so lunky and clunky and one note. If they had released at least one like sentry figure, like one soldier villain robot that you could buy multiple ones of to pit against the Centurions, then it would have been great. It would have been fine. But they didn't do that. I guess the future toy line, they were going to release like a shark at one point and like a panther with all these holes all over its body to add stuff to, but they never did. So the toy line eventually collapsed. I think they were kind of expensive too.
Well, they were
huge. They were expensive.
So I think that's what ultimately suffered for it. But that's my rating on ultimately a really fun show.
And I don't mean to harp on the villain figures, but think about all the accessories and everything that come with the heroes and stuff. The villains didn't have any of that stuff. So it was almost like they were from another toy line, I mean, they weren't, but it was almost as if they were. It's like, why would you even want one of the villains? I do think, though, that they could do a water shooting mechanism on their robotic half, and I think that's also why that side of it was so clunky, because I do think there was something in there, like it was hiding some sort of mechanics or at least a water pump or something. But when you take the heroes and they have all these pieces that you can add on and replace and do stuff with, and then you just get the villains, and I like that they're giant chunks of plastic. I love that, but that's all they did. Like, and you say like one note, but and I was thinking character-wise, but no, toy-wise too, they're very one note. They're just there to stand up and get knocked over, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't like they weren't good foils. Like even like concept wise, when you have the villains, sometimes they're just the opposite side of the heroes, and they just didn't. They had that robot part, but the Centurions weren't really robots. So yeah, what was going on there? And like I said, it would have I feel like if they had made had a little bit more backstory or something to it, then they might have actually designed them differently.
Yeah, it's almost like they designed the villains in a vacuum away from the Centurions, because spoiler alert, when we get to Spiral Zone, the heroes and the villains are very equal. Like, they're very on par with each other. But here, I mean, even at its base level, you can tell that the villains can't even run. They're so clunky. Yeah, and I hate his helmet. The Doc Terror and his helmet was fucking terrible. I think and the blue guy had a hacker. He had a helmet too. I think I fucking literally threw it away right when I got him. I was like, this is trash. This helmet is trash.
So apparently, there's a toy line called Ramen Toys. They released I think he's maybe 4 inches. They're called 80s Commanders, and they released a Ace McCloud figure.
Oh, I think I've seen that. I've seen that. That's actually really cool. And I do want to make a caveat to say, if they ever do, like someone like Super 7 like redoes them, you got to make them 7 inches again. You can't fucking make them small, no matter what Zach says. Because at this point, I'm not going to be playing with it anyways. So I want it to be the big giant piece of plastic that it was.
So you're saying size matters, is what you're saying.
I am saying size fucking matters, baby.
No matter what they tell you,
size
matters.
Hey, I like a good old pocket commando. So there you go. That sounded bad, and it was intentional. Apparently they make all all 3 of the Centurions.
Oh, cool. What was the name of that company again, you said?
Ramen Toys, 80s Commanders. They make they make all 3 guys.
But they probably don't call them Centurions because if they don't have the license, or do they actually call them Centurions?
Yeah, they don't. They just call them 80s Commanders.
It's interesting what you can get away with when you don't actually use the name.
Come on, guys. Yeah, get wise to this shit.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Imagine being one of the last people on Earth, being trapped alone with something not human, something always watching, something always waiting. What would you do? Where would you run? Where would you hide if you were haunted for 7 winters alone?
Podcasting After Dark presents 7 Winters Alone, a dystopian haunted house story by David Irons.
Available now in paperback and ebook.
And now, back to the show.
Speaking of one toy line being one thing in Japan and then coming over to the States and being transformed, Corey?
Spiral Zone! Yeah!
Earth's most powerful soldier!
Yeah, that was a fun song, by the way.
Love that song.
All right, Spiral Zone, 1987. Spiral Zone is an American-produced animated cartoon based on a line of Japanese toys by Bandai. Only 1 season of 65 episodes were produced by Japanese studio Visual 80 and South Korean studio ACOM. ACOM, the latter, is known for shows like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Animaniacs, The Tick, Batman the Animated Series, and so many more. So that's a pretty big studio. The U.S. toy rights were acquired by Tonka, and they produced similar figures to their Japanese counterparts. They weren't exactly the same. They weren't as the Japanese counterparts had the figure underneath had so many more moving parts than the Tonka one did. Each toy was 7 inches tall, another one that these characters were huge, and featured cloth uniforms, armor, equipment, and vehicles. DC Comics put out a 4-issue limited series, which I had every issue.
Same.
So the concept behind it is in 2007, in the far, far future, aka our distant past of 2007, an evil scientist by the name of Overlord and his Black Widows use an experimental NASA shuttle to drop zone generators across half of the Earth, thus creating the Spiral Zone. People inside these areas are transformed into zoners, mindless, zombie-like slaves that Overlord uses as his army. The only people that can stop Overlord are the 5 Zone Riders, led by U.S. Special Forces officer Commander Dirk Courage.
Not Diggler.
Not Dirk Diggler.
You got Rockwell and Centurions.
Oh,
and
man.
Diggler and this.
The Zone Riders are able to enter the spiral zone without being affected thanks to their special suits that can't be reproduced because it took like this special alloy to make them. So it's kind of neat because now that means that there's only, the 5 of them. Awesome. We watched a couple episodes. One particular episode 4, Mission into Evil, was basically just Escape from New York plot, essentially. Yeah. So just as a kid, this was like Inhumanoids. It was another show that I never really got to see. I only maybe caught 1 or 2 episodes, but I thought it was so cool that it just became mythical to me. And I was like, oh my God, like this spiral zone thing. And I had the comics, so I knew of its existence, but I never got a chance to see the cartoon. I did have 1 toy. I had Tank. I play like Centurions. I just played the shit out of him by himself. Like he just fought imaginary creatures or whatever. Actually, not gonna lie, I would take his helmet off and use him as a colonial marine. I would just make him be fighting like xenomorphs and whatnot because I didn't have any of the bad guys, which I actually wanted. Yeah, buddy, Diallo.
What's a xenomorph?
Good one, buddy. Good one. It's a bug hunt. So yeah, this was another one that was traumatizing to me as a kid, especially if you watch Mission into Evil. Like the people get turned into zombies in this. Unlike in Inhumanoids, it seems to be once you are brought out of the zone, the spiral zone, the effects will wear off and everything. But it was freaky to me, especially you see it in this episode, Mission into Evil episode 4. It was freaky to me because people would be existing and going about their daily business right outside of the zone, and then this kid gets walks up next to the zone and then someone just grabs him, out of it. And I was like, holy shit, it was just so scary. But
it was just a barrier there, yeah. like a wooden barrier.
No, it was just cones. It was cones. But I'm sorry, I got so excited to talk about the episode and everything. I forgot to mention the voice actors. Everybody we've ever talked about is in this.
Everybody mentioned so far, and Bumblebee.
Exactly. So yeah, Frank Welker is in it.
Frank Welker.
We have Michael Bell. He's Duke, like you've mentioned before. Although he plays a Japanese character named Hiro Taka in this one, so that's
racist.
Interesting.
That's racist.
Yep. We need Fern on here.
Cultural
racist.
appropriation.
We have, of course, Neil Ross. He actually plays Overlord. We have Mona Marshall, who plays, I love this name, Duchess Dyer. She's fantastic.
She's great.
Yeah, she's great, and she's been in so much stuff. And we have Dan Gilvezan as Dirk Courage, who he was Bumblebee in Transformers, famously. So,
Awesome.
Of course, it has its cast of actors that we all know and love. Oh, by the way, Hal Rail, who plays Max Jones in this, he was also the voice of the Predator in Predator 2, one of Zach's favorite movies.
Sure is. Top, bottom, 100.
So yeah,
JK.
I loved the armor. I loved the characters. I loved the villains. And I loved most of the vehicles. I did not care for that personal tank thingy that had the weird mace. You know what I'm talking about. These bludgeoning mace things.
Big testicles on it?
Giant testicles on the side of their tires. Where you could tell okay, toy-wise, you get why they make that into a toy. But then you watch it in the show and you're like, but why would you create that in real life? You know what I mean? But other than that, I thought it was a strong show. The second episode we saw, the other one that you sent, Zach, where it actually dives into the origin of the spiral zone and everything. In that episode, they have this weird, they don't say slave trade or whatever, but there is this idea that they're trading zombies from one zone to another via this train system. It's dealing with some super, super dark and heady shit. And then on top of it, like as a kid, the fact that the bad guys all like were in New York, and like New York was like zoned out and everything, and they were like in the Chrysler building, like it was all real locations that I was, you know, growing up only 4 hours away from. So it kind of just gave it this sense of, I don't know, real world urgency as a kid, and definitely freaked me out. I think this one and Inhumanoids almost evenly freaked me out as far as like trauma goes. But toy wise, I still adore the toys to this day. I think I still have my tank toy in my mom's basement somewhere. But I love the fact that they had like cloth outfits, you know, there was cloth, because it was like the old style GI Joes essentially, you know, and I liked that the armor and everything. And I do believe this was one of those kind of toy line where you could buy extra attachments for the armor and buy vehicles and stuff like that. But overall, I thought it was, I loved it back as a kid, even though it scared the shit out of me. And I think it holds up really well to today, and I think 99% of like the designs on the show are fan-fucking-tastic. So that's, I thought this was great. Diallo, what'd you think of Spiral Zone, buddy?
I never watched it. I barely remember it. I don't even like. For some reason I knew the Spiral Zone. You know, maybe they were like commercials that came out for it. But yeah. I literally don't remember the toys. I don't remember the vehicles. I didn't know anything. But I was like, but if anybody ever said Spiral Zone, I still knew what they were talking about.
So thank goodness for marketing, right?
Yeah. And it's another one too. I don't even know when it aired, like, because I couldn't even like a lot of shows, you know, I could say, oh well, it came on Sunday and that's why I didn't see it, or if it came on early mornings, if it came on TV 36 where I lived, I didn't get to see it much because that was like San Jose and it was very grainy picture that I could only like get at night, you know. So not really sure about any of that. And I watched the episode and I really enjoyed it. So I was really glad that I got a chance to see it. I did think, and I only watched the pilot episode, the first episode. I did think that it needed a little bit more, and I'm sure obviously you went into it a lot more of what was going on with it, but it felt to me like the world and the mechanisms of how the world worked weren't really explained to me in the first episode. It just sort of was like, here we are, and this is what's going on, and I needed more because it was so rich that I needed to understand why there were just cones
blocking the Spiral Zone. Yeah. Why didn't they actually erect some kind of like a barrier or something if it was that dangerous?
And then the vehicles didn't, like, I was kind of what you said. I literally was watching it. I was like, why would you make vehicles like that? You know?
You're like, I get why it's a toy, but why in the real world?
Why is this? But you know, now that, because you said it was originally a Japanese cartoon, I think.
No, it was actually just a Japanese toy line.
A toy line. Okay.
By Bandai.
Yeah, okay.
And designed by one of the designers of Gundam.
Okay. Well, because the animation, actually, this was one thing that I noticed. The animation actually was really good. Like, at least in that first episode, it looked very Japanese. Actually, it looked like almost like it wasn't quite as good as a lot of 80s anime, but it was like the quality, I think, was higher than some of the other things that we watched. So I was impressed by that. But yeah, it just like I liked it. Shout out to San Francisco again. That was one of my big takeaways from watching both of those episodes. I was like, oh yeah, there you go. But yeah, I thought like the concept and everything I thought was really cool. Again, just watching the pilot episode, I wanted more explanation of like what was going on. But other than that, like I could keep watching it and find out more because like I said, I did love the action of it. And there was
I actually watched a couple episodes. There was another one where I watched where there was an old timer that used to fight in the spiral zone, and they went into they thought he like betrayed them or something. I thought it was a very complex story, and it was actually really cool. So there's a lot more character to it than just like what you see on other shows. So
Yeah.
I dug it. I really dug it.
Yeah, and to your point, I think it was the same as you. I don't know when it was on air. I barely ever saw it, but I did occasionally. So I'm thinking it was either Sunday morning or it was weekdays, but like at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., that slot or something like that. And then to the backstory and everything, like you wanting more, Zach can speak to this a little bit better, but there's an episode later on that actually has the origin, but it's not the first episode. It's like way later that they actually give you what happened, like the origin of the spiral zone and everything, which is pretty cool. Zach, thoughts on Spiral Zone?
Well, I love this show. I've always loved this show. When you said you were going to take this show, I was so excited because I would race home to watch the last 10 minutes of the show after school. I think it was on in the Bay Area at like 2:30 or maybe 3.
Oh wow! No wonder I
Monday
didn't
through
see
Friday.
it.
And it was so hard because it was by far my favorite show on TV at the time. We're talking 87, so I was like 11 years old, way into like intense shit and like dark stuff. Aliens had already come out at this point. Predator was out. I was watching all that stuff, and I wanted a level of intensity that Spiral Zone gave me. It was way dark. You guys are right. It's so dark. I saw on another segment online and comparing it to like basically The Walking Dead for kids at that time, and it's gritty. It's dark. Episode 4. So everyone listening who's never seen the show, just jump ahead and watch episode 4 and episode 54 to start. Those are the two that you should start with this series. That's really gives you the meat of what this show is about.
So wait a minute. It takes 54 episodes to get the origin?
Well, you get an origin story in episode 4.
Oh, okay.
A little bit of it. You get a little bit of an origin story in episode 4, and then you get a little bit more depth as to what what the villains want to do. Yeah, it's way out of order. Because clearly episode 4 at the end of it, episode 4 has scenes that are actually in the opening credits.
Yeah, the kid grabbing the kid and everything.
Where they grab on a diversity level, this show gets an A, I think, out of the 3 shows. I was going to say really quickly that Centurions probably gets a C-, but this show was so badass. I just like wanted to live in this universe and be a part of the Spiral Zone. They were such badass characters. The villains were super evil. Reaper, the guy who did the voice of Reaper, I'm not tracking who it is off the top of my head, but it's such a cool tone that he has to his voice. They use like real lasers in this show. I agree with Diallo. The animation was so good. It blew me away. And it was something I'd never seen before. In a world where you get turned into a zombie. How cool is that? Like, it was really unique. Out of all 3 of these shows, to me, it was the most bleakest, darkest, and unique for me. The toy line, I have very mixed feelings about. Overall, it's my favorite toy line out of the 3. The toy line was great. I love the cloth clothes. I love the accessories. The villains were very creepy. They did not look like they did in the cartoon. They came pretty close, but they didn't look like Bandit, I think, is one of the characters. Like, how he looks in the cartoon is way cooler than he looks in the action figure version.
Yeah.
He actually looks like it's kind of racist looking, I think, the way they depict him, just to be honest with you. But man, and then, like like I said, the accessories were cool. I agree with you guys. The vehicles were like, what the hell? I think they're just trying to be original. I think Mask had already come out at this point.
The motorcycles were cool, or like the one tire cycle. That was probably the coolest vehicle that they had.
I agree. My biggest complaint with the figures is I never wanted to take the heroes' helmets off because they look so weird. Dirk Courage's eyes, and I sent a picture to Diallo and Corey at the same time while I was.
It's
I'm not
nightmare fuel.
I'm not gonna sleep.
No,
No,
you're not going to sleep
fucking
because his
nightmare
eyes are
fuel.
like, he's got pinhole blue eyes and they're so creepy looking with this weird face. I think as a kid, the figures actually creep me out. They gave me night terrors. And it was the heroes, I think, more so. But the villains they're mutated zombies.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's the Walking Dead comic book series that Corey and I talked about way back.
Oh, yeah.
Where the zombies have a brain, they're a sentient, and they're like fully aware, and they're trying to take over the world. And that's what it is.
Yeah, so guys and gals, if you don't know what we're talking about, in season 2, Zach and I reviewed the comic series from Aircel Comics back in the 80s, or probably mid 90s, early 90s, something like that, called The Walking Dead. This is not the Kirkman version. This was the original Walking Dead. So go check that out on season 2. We have it on the feed and everything.
Yeah, go check that out. And if you guys are curious about this kind of digging into the series more, get the DC comic. You can get it really cheap on eBay. The characters are super cool. It's weird that Hero was voiced by Duke, Michael Bell. Like that dude, not to stereotype or whatever, but they could have cast like Ki Young, who did a shit ton of voices back then too. I'm like, why didn't you cast an Asian actor to play an Asian character? But whatever. The guy who plays Max, his character voice is so badass, and then Tank is like a ripoff of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his son is trapped in the zone.
Yeah,
and it's like it's so cool. It's so cool. This one has, to me, a lot more soap operetta, Robotech type elements to it, where it's like, I want to see this universe unfold, and I want to see a movie version of this shit. I want to see like more of Spiral Zone, and it's such a shame that you can't get it on DVD because I want to own the DVDs. But fortunately, because the quality on YouTube is fine, it's passable, but it's not that great.
It's not the worst thing we've ever seen on TV Obscura, but it's certainly not as good as the Centurions on Daily Motion. And Zach
and Inhumanoids too is pretty good.
Humanoids looks fantastic as well. And Zach, to your point, I mean, I'm looking through the series writers and everything. We have like Jerry Conway, who like did the story for Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah. There you go.
We have freaking Haskell Barkin. He's done episodes of Monsters, The Twilight Zone, Tales from the Dark Side. Patrick Berry, he's done episodes of War of the Worlds, the TV series that we love. Hunter, a show that I loved as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like so I think there's a decent pedigree here. And then Zach, to answer your question from earlier, who did the voice of Reaper? His name was Denny Delk. He does a lot of video game stuff, notably Diallo. He was in Knights of the Old Republic, like as like a bartender character. But then he did like a stint of like being the narrator for every Star Wars game in like the early 2000s to like 2006. Okay. So like if there was a narrator, it was his voice.
Very cool tone.
Yeah, very, very cool. And Zach, I think what you're saying, I agree with. Like, I think of all three of these shows, I think all three of them could actually be easily rebooted now and everything. But I think this one would probably be could maintain most of what its look, most of everything, and not have to be like retooled too much. I mean, you even have a female Zone Rider in this as well. You have female good guys and female bad guys. Like that's awesome to see. And what I think that would be great for this franchise, make it a video game. Make it a turn-based strategy game like XCOM, where you have to control like your squad of Zone Riders and have it, you can outfit them with what you want and all this kind of stuff, but do something like that. And I think you could have missions where you have to go into the zone and, rescue somebody or destroy one of the zone generators or whatever. But I think that there's a lot here you can still mine for some good shit.
I agree.
If I was a studio exec, I would actually, like, if I could get the rights to this, I would just make this show like a live action, like it easily could be on, like CW or something like that. Like, and one of their more dark's not the word, but one of the more thoughtful shows that ends up being on CW, like at the 100 for a while, stuff like that. I definitely, like, I really loved the concept of it when I was watching it. Like, and you wouldn't have to change very much. Like, it's all there. You just make it. Just do a representation of it in live action, and everything that you need's already there. The terror of it,
just having your body mutated and losing your mind, and there could be the whole thing of like, do we want to like fight these soldiers? But that also means we're fighting sort of technically innocent people or something. Yeah. And then I would love to see that the bad guys maybe would be able to take more damage or maybe be stronger or something like that. But
well, that's why in episode 4 is so pivotal, because it lays the groundwork for kind of the development of like these mindless people, and like when you can save them or when it's too late to save them potentially. There's one, Dirk's like kind of idol, or a guy he looks up to is gets pulled into the zone, and they have to rescue him, and he pulls a gun on him at the end, and it's so dramatic, because he's basically following the orders of Overlord, and the little kid is too, a little kid holding a gun, pointing a gun at people. Yeah. That's pretty intense for an 80s cartoon. Yeah. And I will say too, last thing I'll say is there's like, a romance between Duchess Dyer and Overlord. Yeah, and it's like, that's some cool heavy shit. Like I think you don't see that all that often. You saw it with Destro and Baroness. But I can't think of that many cartoons that have like a love angle going on.
It's especially when like one of Overlord's second in command was like giving a report, and Duchess Dyer kind of like tacks onto it, but kind of just steals the information and everything to make herself look good. Afterwards, he's like, you don't ever do that again, make your, and she's like, yeah, well, Overlord's romantically interested in me, not you. So basically, fuck off. And I was like, I know.
Dude. And like, they all hate each other.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because they're all like evil fucks.
They're evil, but then I would like to see maybe like some kind of motivation for Overlord. And he's like, you know what? You all are destroying the world. I'm going to make it better. Like give him a reason for creating these spiral zones, and make it be like, in his head, he thinks he's doing the right thing or whatever. But yeah, I think it's a lot of fertile ground to be mined here. And like Diallo said, you could just straight up do like a 1-to-1, just straight up make it a live action show. And I think it would work, especially if you had the right writers on it and actually tackled some interesting subject matters with it. Like you could even like tackle like refugee stuff, like bringing people out of the zone, and how do we rehabilitate them, and where do we put them, and all these it just, there's so many things you could do with it. So I think it's really cool. My final thoughts, I fucking loved it. It held like this weird mythical place in my head as a kid, and it's the same as Inhumanoids because I just didn't get to see it much, but the micro moments that I saw scared me so much or fascinated me that just left such a lasting impression in my head. And I gotta say, Spiral Zone holds up so well, just like all three of these shows. And then as far as toys go, I'm giving this one a 5. I loved these toys, even with because I like the villains. The villains looked just as good as the good guys, and then the silly vehicles, I can totally buy in toy form. That doesn't bother me. And if anything, I just didn't want to own the little tank thing. I would just own the motorcycle thing, So, yeah, I know. It's a horrible nightmare of a face, but it was still a fucking fun toy to play with, bro. And I had a blast blast playing with it. Diallo, final thoughts and your toy rating?
Yeah, like I said, I didn't have a lot of experience with it. I only have one image of the toy, and
Well, they have two with Zach's the one he's been sending.
No, I mean that's the one. That's actually the only one I have.
That's the one you have.
Yeah.
The Nightmare Fuel.
So I'm like, I can't really rate this one very, very high when it comes to toys. So I mean, just for fun, I'll say 1, just to be ridiculous. But the show itself, again, I thought it was actually pretty cool. I loved like the setup and the world, and like I said, my frustration watching that episode was it wasn't like there. It's just like I wanted to know like how all of this worked, and I could really tell that there was something there, but it didn't seem like they did any world building in that first episode. But anyways, yeah, I dug it, and once again, glad I get a chance to watch these things that I either skipped or somehow missed, and add them to my brain repertoire.
Your brain grapes?
Yeah, my brain reservoir, I should say. Yeah.
Zach, what's the Bodhi rating on this one?
The Bodhi rating on this one is a 4, but I give it a 5. So we're gonna call it a 5, and then
because I take precedence.
Because he's like, are there zombies? I don't like, because he doesn't like zombies right now. I'm like, yeah. I get it, bro. I get it, dude. I get it, but nope, it's a 5. It's a 5. It's a 5. I'm right and you're wrong. No, I'm kidding. And then on the toy level, I would give it a 5, but those eyes are so creepy. They want to make me nightmare fuel every night and night. Every time I see them, they want to make me pee my pants. They're creepy. The nightmare fuel of the eyes. All of the heroes' eyes are creepy looking. So I give it a 4.5. And diversity, given an A out of the 3. Out of the 3, based on the 3, I give it an A.
Yeah, because it actually has a female, and it's ethnic, multi-national, cast or crew.
Yep.
Which is cool because even though the voice actors are all white.
Yeah, I'll give it an A- because of that.
That's right. Exactly.
Come on, Michael Bell, don't take the job away from someone.
Do that. That figure that you showed us. He looks like he would be voiced by Phil Hartman.
Hi. I'm a caveman lawyer.
I'll make sure I post that picture on Instagram.
Nightmare fuel. Yeah, just throw at the bottom. Nightmare fuel.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody. But
actually, but if you look at some of the villain figures, they're creepy as shit too. So
and I like the design of the villains where they all have this. The way they kind of portray the zombie aspect of it is they have these weird red splotches on them, but it's also kind of mutating them. And I always liked how Overlord, how it kind of goes over his nose. I thought it was kind of a cool design to it. And then the chick was, kind of half hot. I'd still, do her even though the side of her face was melting off. Duchess Dyer.
I'd still do her.
I'd still Overlord her.
Jesus Christ. By the way, dare I say, maybe one of Tonka's best toys they ever made.
I'll push back and say my favorite Tonka toys were those Wasteland Warriors ones that were like Mad Max toys that came out.
Yes.
I forget what they're called, but if you look up like Tonka Mad Max toys, you will find them, and I had every single one of them. That is horrific. That's
Bandit. You can cut this, but doesn't he look like a terrorist, Iraqi terrorist?
Oh my good lord!
He looks like a penis. His head looks like a penis.
He didn't look like that in the cartoon.
He looks like a cross between like a Klingon and like
Klingon.
And a dick, a penis.
I was gonna say like the bad guys from Jason the Wheeled Warriors, whatever that.
Oh yeah. The brains
kind of looks like that.
Yeah. I mean, they're like and in the cartoon, Reaper looks fucking cool, but then the figure that's creepy. Like
he looks like shit.
God. He looks like he looks like Shock on the Walls fell from TNG. That's what he looks like. You remember that episode of The Next Generation where he spoke in metaphor? Shock on the walls.
Yeah. Yep. That's a famous episode.
That's what that guy looks
Nightmare
like.
fuel.
He
Yeah.
does,
Nightmare
and that's the big difference between the Japanese toys and the American ones. They retooled the heads, and then they had different. They had the different body. You know, the armature of the body was different. I think the Japanese ones were a bit more realistically proportioned and whatnot. But then the Tonka ones, I'm sure that they just retooled the bodies, but still were able to keep the same pieces that went on top of it, because the armor and the cloth outfits looked like they were the exact same.
I don't think they made the villains on the Japanese ones.
No, and those were just, I think at the same time, those were just the same kind of armaments, but painted black versus like that lighter gray or whatever. But this was, like I said, this was an episode in the making for however long we've been doing TV Obscura now. I mean, this is episode 19, so it's been about 19 months. Sans 1 month without Diallo, unfortunately, but the
Podcast
first one.
most powerful hosts.
But dude, we've been talking about this episode, these 3 shows for a long time, and I am so happy to say that I fucking loved every single one of them, and I would highly recommend every single one of them. As far as toys go, that's, hit or miss here and there, but Nightmare Fuel. But since most of us, don't have the money to get to them, get the toys now, that's kind of moot. It doesn't matter. The shows, all 3 of the shows, fucking fantastic. Loved them all. That was my final thought on all 3 of them. Diallo, final thoughts on all 3 of them, or anything else you want to add?
Yeah, what you said.
Exactly. Zach?
Yeah, what you said.
There we go. Diallo, what you got going on out there in the podcasting world, my man?
The first Noel, I just finished writing chapter 7 yesterday, so I'll be recording that soon and getting that episode out. And I'm going to be spending the next few days in a tropical location, secluded. And I will be devoting a lot of my time to writing, so I'll get some scripts done and hopefully get ears finally nailed down, and working on another project that, in some months I can announce. And that's it, man. Just
Awesome.
just making my way. Just making my way.
And of course, go check out Angela and the Dark by Diallo and Russell Fox. And did you get an awesome review the other day, you were saying?
Yeah, I got an awesome review the other day. I actually, a friend of mine bought an issue over Christmas and for her daughter, and her daughter took it to school, and her daughter came back and said, all the boys loved it.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
she
awesome.
she said they really did. I was like, oh, that's really cool, because it was like all the boys loved it, and it was like the best review I could have gotten.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And of
Yeah.
course, I'll have all the links in the show notes for everything Diallo is working on. Zach, what you got going on over at $2 Late Fee this week?
Well, listening to Diallo talk, I was stuck in my head. I was like, making my way in the universe today. Diallo's giving it everything he's got. Oh, anyways, oh my gosh, $2 Late Fee. We've got an interview upcoming with a legendary villain, this guy named Patrick Kilpatrick. He was in Remo Williams. He was the Tiffany Tooth in Remo Williams, but the dude has been in a myriad of other movies. We've got a wild interview with that guy, not what I expected, and in a good way. June is Streets of Fire month, so almost all the episodes we're going to have on $2 Late Fee will feature people from Streets of Fire. Michael Pere, for one, and then Stoney Jackson. If you don't know who he is, he's the lead singer of the Sorrells, and that dude is phenomenal. So look for those to come out in June. And we have a returning Diane Franklin coming back to the show to do a live show in June.
That's dope.
That's awesome.
To talk about her book, to promote her book. We've actually got a lot of guests lined up for $2 Late Fee. And then I do want to do a little cheap plug. By the time this airs, Corey and I will have interviewed someone very special. So look for our Instagram post for that to come out, and you'll know who when you see who it is. If you're a Patreon subscriber, you already know who it is.
Yeah.
If you want to find out who it is before we announce it, go sign up on our Patreon.
Listen to last month's Wrap Up After Dark, the newest Wrap Up After Dark.
Yeah, we're joined by Erin Gilmer, who is a patron of our show, a friend of the show on Instagram, blah, blah, blah.
She's the one that
Very
picked for us
cool.
to review Hard Ticket to Hawaii.
Yeah, she's super cool. Had really great discussion with her, and we dropped a big bomb on that show. A happy bomb. A happy bomb.
A happy
Is there such a
bomb.
thing as a happy bomb? I guess so. Anyways, go check it out. Really consider signing up for Patreon because we've got some great stuff on Patreon.
Like, for example, Zach and I have been going through John Carpenter's entire filmography from beginning, and the plan is to go until the end. With Zach, I just looked up the other day for, I don't know why, but The Ward is our last movie that we're going to watch. Do you know who's in that one?
Unfortunately. Who's in that?
Amber Turd.
Amber.
Amber Heard is in it.
Amber Grumpy.
I got
Yeah.
where you were going.
Yeah, thank you, Diallo. Thank you. Amber Poops the Bed Heard is going to be in that one, so I'm
She
excited
left
for.
a Grumpy in the bed.
So-
Fucking guy. Jesus.
So-
Topical.
Yeah, exactly. So right now we've watched Dark Star, Salt and Precinct 13, Halloween, and his first TV movie, Somebody's Watching Me. And
Not the Rockwell song.
that's right. And then this month coming up, or the month that we're in right now, we are going to tackle his second made-for-TV movie, Elvis, which should be interesting because this is where he met Kurt Russell on.
Yeah, I'm very excited to. This will be the first time I've seen Elvis, so
Me too.
I'm looking into. Not the first time I saw Honeymoon in Vegas or Heartbreak Hotel or Bubba Hotep,
Yes,
but the
yeah.
first time seeing Elvis.
Yeah, same, and same. But yeah, at the end of the series, the Carpenter Factor series falls under the Auteur de Force tier because when we're done with that in December 2023, we will move on to our next auteur. We've been talking about maybe Michael
Steven
Mann,
Spielberg.
maybe Don Coscarelli. We don't know yet, but we'll get there because we have a lot of John Carpenter stuff to go through. And
George Lucas.
and just to let you know, we're not breaking the movies down or anything, and we will be revisiting Prince of Darkness. We will be revisiting The Thing in order. But the idea of the show is more of a freeform discussion, and we are looking at each movie as a part of the whole, and trying to see what actually makes up the Carpenter Factor. So go check that out on Patreon, and go check out every podcast on the BFOP network. Check out Talking Back, Action, Blast from Our Past, Throwback Trivia Takedown, People Don't Forget, and the newest one, Return, Revenge, Resurrection, the horror podcast by Dean of Talking Back. So he's got a new one as well, and we have a great time. And of course, check out all the friends of the show. Check out $2 Late Fee. Check out the First Noel Chronicles. Check out Give Me Back My Action Movies. Give Me Back My Horror Movies. Ready to Retro. All our fun friends out there in the world. And, of course, check out everything David is doing. David Irons, our man. And go check out Seven Winters Alone. Go check out everything. Just
Do it.
go to our
Guys,
website.
Come on, David.
Go to our website. We have everything over there. So
I need to backtrack just a little bit.
Sure.
I remember watching the Elvis TV movie back when I was a kid. I had no idea Kurt Russell. Like, I didn't know what a Kurt Russell was back then.
It's not a Grumpy.
And I'm looking at the page and I'm like, oh, I look at all these people. I had no idea he was Elvis. This is crazy. I didn't know that was John Carpenter.
The
That's
thing
why
that
when he did.
the thing, a little bit of a spoiler, but we'll just give it. He didn't do the music for Somebody's Watching Me, but he does do the music for Elvis. And I'm curious, and I know Zach is too, to see if it sounds like John Carpenter or if he's gonna try to make it sound Elvis-y music. I'm not sure.
I remember distinctly watching this movie. I remember like Elvis, like I remember him walking, and then they were like, "Why are you walking that way?" And he was like, and I remember this whole scene from that. I had no idea
like,
that
I'm walking with Elvis.
I
man.
had no idea that was Kurt Russell. My mind is blown right now.
I love it. Diallo's going down a rabbit hole, but as Diallo goes down a rabbit hole, I'll just say, and I'll just end it with, as always,
Catch you on the obscure side.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zak Schaefer.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim,
And I'm Dean.
and we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.